Excellent. Can you hear me all right and everything, Kai? Sound
Yeah,
good?
loud and clear.
Excellent, brother. Excellent. Okay. So Kai, welcome, brother. Welcome.
Thanks, Matt.
Yes. We are here today, ladies and gentlemen, with Kai von Bodhi of Pathway of Power. And Kai, if it's okay, I'd love to just read your bio that I found on your website. Is that okay? Just give you an introduction that way?
Yeah.
Excellent. And then I'll give you an opportunity to do the same. So we are very happy to have Kai with us here on the eighth episode of the Porn to Purpose podcast, which we're recording live here on my personal page. And then we're also feeding into the Making Peace with Porn community. So Kai von Bodhi is a pioneer in the field of holistic medicine, integrating both ancient alchemy and modern neuroscience into a complete and accessible pathway to unlocking human potential. Holding a master's degree in Oriental medicine, he is an artful teacher of meditation, Tai Chi, Qigong, and mind-body exercise. After spending 15 years studying with masters in the Far East, learning the language, and becoming an insider in traditions often inaccessible to Western students, Kai has been transmitting these ancient technologies infused with modern science to thousands of people in live events, group coaching programs, and one-on-one mentorships. Along the way, he has discovered the powerful synergy of ancient Taoist alchemy and modern biohacking neuroscience, realizing that these ancient alchemists were the earliest biohackers. He's worked with high-achieving entrepreneurs, leaders, and visionary game changers to incorporate microdoses of these effective practices into their busy lives for more fulfillment, flow, and success on all levels. Kai's journey started young when through the loss of close family members, he was driven to dive deep into the realm of alternative medicine and healing. These events, which form the core of his love for his patients, clients, and students, continues to infuse his work with a sense of family. In the modern era, with people's lives of overwhelm on the rise, Kai has found unique ways to incorporate these ancient yet modern practices into bite-sized chunks that anyone can apply right away for huge dividend in performance, peace of mind, and clean energy to carry them through their days. Welcome, Kai von Bodhi.
I love how you pronounce my last name. Thank you. That's such a beautiful pronunciation of it.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Yeah, I'm a student of some of the methods in which you studied as well, and martial arts as well. And yeah, I'm kind of familiar with that name and that terminology and that pronunciation. So thanks for noticing. Appreciate it, brother. Yeah, man. So it's so great to have you here, Kai. I think we've been in touch and communication for over a year now, I think. And as we've connected and communicated, kind of realizing that the work that you're doing very much aligns with the work that we're doing in the Making Peace with Porn community. And, specifically whenever I thought about you, or you kind of came into my radar as a potential guest in our conversation and in servicing and kind of sharing what you do with our audience of men, a big desire for me is within the Making Peace with Porn community. We've supported men in helping them achieve great levels of abstinence from pornography in their lives, and awareness around the relationship with porn and their own sexuality. But it's like, what now do we do with that energy? What's a healthy, expression of the sexual energy, and how do we begin to direct that in more healthy ways? So that was really like what I saw as a great alignment with the work that we're doing. So that was kind of my initial interest and thought. And as I've gone through your bio and some of the work that you're doing and checking out some of your previous interviews in preparation for our conversation, really inspired and intrigued with the work that you're doing and your history and the integration of all of that. So I'd love to just hand the microphone over to you, if you will, and just allow you to kind of introduce yourself. So Kai, if you would, why don't you go ahead and say hello, welcome, brother, and maybe share a little bit about who you are and where you're coming from.
Yeah, well, here in your bio, Red, is like you trying to fit into clothes that you're not sure if they fit you anymore. It's like you have to kind of reinvent it every couple of years as my identity changes. But it's pretty true to what I'm still doing. And so, I grew up in rural New Jersey in a YMCA camp. And that's significant because, you know, in the summertime and in the winter as a retreat center, we got Buddhist groups, Muslim groups, Christian groups. And I was trained by my father, by his example, to come with a heart of service. And so from a very young age, even though I lived in a mostly white, middle, upper class community, my secret life outside of school was imbued with chanting and seeing people do these weird things. But little by little, I was falling in love with it, you know? So that's kind of my origin. And then, you know, as you mentioned in the bio, and since then, I have had the privilege and the challenge of being the escort of my mother and my brother and my father right through until they passed on to the other side. And I consider those initiations, and especially watching how the mind and body interact, and where Western medicine falls terribly short, where it's amazing and epic and has extended lives, and also where it just really fails to address the spirit and the mental emotional. And that happening with my mother really drove me to move to Asia, to dive into what I believed at that time was the most integrated spiritual, alchemical, medical system on the planet, just because of the population of China and the fact that when you go into a hospital in China, there is traditional Chinese medicine and Western medicine side by side. There's not a lot of competition. It's fully integrated. And the doctors don't have any issue going back and forth. And I knew that from just a little bit of research. So I ended up staying there for a long time. And that's really where my first experience came with abstinence, because it took me a couple years to learn the language and find my Taoist mentor. But when I found him, he recognized, especially with the Western students, because there were at any given time, there were probably 10 to 12 Chinese students, usually elder people. And then there was like 5 or 6 Western students, some guys from Israel, myself, a French guy. And anyway, he recognized from our candid conversations that we were losing our essence a lot, that we were sexually active. We would talk about it in the temple in the morning, the little pagoda, like looks like where you are right now. Yeah. And eventually he said, okay, guys, I want you to plan to not work for 30 days. And we're going to go into the mountains to a Taoist temple retreat center. And you guys, you cannot ejaculate. You cannot. It's part, like, there's certain elements of your training that you will never get past if you continue to lose your seed. And I was so bought into the whole process that I actually looked forward to it. You know, no drinking, no chasing after beautiful women. I didn't have to have that desire, you know, pulling away from my practice and cultivation. And so we went up into the mountains and we had a very rigorous training schedule. We woke up very early in the morning. It was, you know, beautiful and misty, like you would imagine. And that was the first time, I think, since I was probably 12 years old that I ever went 30 days without ejaculating.
Yeah.
And I felt amazing. My hair got thicker. Literally, I could feel my hair getting thicker. And so that was the beginning for me, like going back again and again, not because of a moral reason, but because of how good it felt. Yeah. And what I wanted. So anyway, that's kind of, you know, I came back from China. I went to Chinese medicine school, got my, you know, did that journey of academia and clinical practice. And then as I got out, I just realized I wanted to work with men, and that most people didn't have long periods of time to practice. And I knew for myself that I needed to take all of those breath techniques and postural techniques, and I needed to cook them down into small pieces where someone could be tempted by porn or triggered by their wife, and they have something they can do right away to change their state, a la Tony Robbins, a la NLP, whatever that was. So anyway, that's kind of how I arrived, recognizing that every year, every couple of months, that abstinence was fun. It was enjoyable. Made my workouts stronger. My martial arts were better. I had more compassion for the people in my life.
Interesting. Yeah, brother. Thank you so much. How much time did you actually spend in China, Kai? And how did you end up over there in the first place?
Well, I think if we clock all the time that I've been over there, it's probably close to 10 years.
Wow.
But I spent 7 years straight, 5 in the mainland, 2 in Taiwan.
Wow.
And how did I get there? Honestly, I had a spiritual awakening in college. And it's relative to our topic. I was in a fraternity. I didn't make the sports team that I wanted to make in college, and I kind of fell into a fraternity and into the party life. And I was just trying to get through college with the least effort possible. And then I discovered I took a class called Living Religions of the World, and it was a Christian college, but this class blew my mind. And as we went through each religion, we eventually got to the sects, and when it divided up and they started to have infighting, and these people don't agree with these people, until we got to the Taoists. And when we came to the Taoist religion, my long-haired Southern Christian professor said, he said, look, we really even have trouble considering Taoism a religion. It's more of a science. It's more of an early earth science. And he said the reason that it is because it's not a moral. Like, they don't say to not masturbate or to not have premarital sex because it's wrong in the eyes of God. They say that it's hygienically inappropriate. It's a waste of energy. Like a one-night stand with a woman you have no connection with, there's a massive loss of neurotransmitters in that ejaculation. Now, you ejaculate with your wife and you hold each other, and that energy is automatically circulated up through the heart and the mind in that post-coital like cuddling. There's oxytocin, there's a restoration of testosterone, there's the resting into that feminine energy. So when he shared that part that it was more empirical, that the Taoist practitioner would be taught methods to introspect and to look out into the stars, into nature, and come up with their own conclusions about the nature of reality. I was lit up. It was the first time I was in a class, and I wasn't there because I had to be.
Yeah.
So I followed that path. I took more Asian philosophy classes. I followed that teacher. And eventually, when I got out of school, I was working with troubled kids, at-risk youth in a wilderness program. I realized that I wanted to go all the way down the rabbit hole. And I knew from the little bit of money that I was making in that role that it was expensive. Even in then, which was it was like the late 90s in Virginia. Tai Chi class, Qigong class, yoga class, hypnotherapy. I was spending all my money, not on beer anymore, but on personal development. And so as I started to research and watch documentaries, I was like, wait a second, if I go to China, there are hospitals, there are parks, it's free. All I got to do is get myself over there. So I took the plunge. That's what sent me over.
Wow, man. And when you got over there, Kai, were you working, or how were you sustaining yourself, if you don't mind sharing them?
Oh yeah.
Very curious.
That's a story. I started out going through the Peace Corps. And there was something that happened at the last minute, all in divine timing, that caused me to feel like I didn't want to, and I pulled out of the Peace Corps like a month before I was supposed to leave the country. And I found an English teaching job in a very remote and rural province of China, Guizhou province. It's very central, mountains. It had no Western artifices of culture. There was no McDonald's. There was no KFC. A lot of cities are very Westernized in that way. I wanted this, romantic experience. So I took an English teaching job, and it was a city of 500,000 people. And I was one of 5 foreigners in the whole city.
Wow.
2 Peace Corps volunteers, 2 VSO of British Volunteer Service. I was the 5th foreigner. I was the only one there privately. And it was awesome because the school was so grateful to have me. They did whatever they could to keep me happy, which included I had a Chinese medicine tutor who spoke English from the local Chinese medicine school. One day a week, I went to the hospital and I got to just watch the clinic. Like, China's level of lack of privacy and the openness of the people is incredible. They just walk me into the clinic, put a white lab coat on me. I have no background or anything. And I'm seeing butts. I'm seeing what we would consider very embarrassing diseases. And these Chinese people are just happy to have me there, happy to let me in on their clinical situation. The doctors welcome me. It was beautiful. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I got there.
Very cool, man. And so I'm curious if you would share, like, how did you connect with your teacher that you spent all that time with? And can you tell me, can you tell us a bit more about that relationship and who that person was?
Yeah, I miss him. Haven't been back since COVID. And so I got through So yeah, just be transparent. It's kind of interesting. I was completely celibate when I got there, and I
Mm-hmm.
was vegetarian,
Mm.
and I was not drinking alcohol, and I was sick for 6 months. And the sickness would bounce between my upper respiratory tract. So I'd cough, phlegm. And then as soon as that resolved, it would go into my digestive tract. Now, if you understand Chinese medicine, lungs and large intestine are connected.
Mm.
And I was either having GI issues or upper respiratory. And it got dark, Matt. Like there were times, because I had tried everything. I tried Chinese medicine, Western medicine, antibiotics, probiotics. I tried everything. I got stuff shipped from America, whatever. I thought to myself, if I would rather die here than go home having failed to bring back the treasure that I know is here for me.
Yeah.
And it was in that suffering that I was pushing through a class with my Chinese medicine doctor, and he said this sentence that was that man, or humans, and nature are undivisible and are indivisible, and that what happens in nature, from the temperature to the moisture to the mental, emotional, energetics that are there, that there's no way for us to separate our health from that. And that we each have a constitution. You have a unique constitution. I have a unique constitution. And he's, the elevation, all of these things impact our health. And I said, is this the right city for my constitution? And he looked at me and he goes, no. He's like, it's cold, it's damp, there's a lot of coal dust in the air. I'm like, where in China is it right for my constitution? And he told me Yunnan province, high elevation. It's like San Francisco. There's jungles in the south because it borders Thailand and Vietnam. And then the Himalayas are in the north where it borders Tibet. And so it's this beautiful mixture of warmth and cool, high elevation. And he also told me that my constitution was not suitable to monk-like life. He said that my personality, which has a lot of the wood element, needs to celebrate and play. I need beauty. I need contact with women. I need a little bit of alcohol to move my liver chi. He said it's not wise for me constitutionally to be a monk. I'm not a water constitution or a metal constitution. Anyway, I didn't really know. I just knew it. So anyway, within a couple months, I moved to this other city, and Kunming, and I had my little dictionary, little red dictionary, and I took the train. I quit my job. I gave them 30 days notice. They were not happy, but they could see I was really suffering. And I got to Kunming, and I relaxed a little bit my limitations, and my health never really failed again. It all came back. And it was that city that I ended up finding my teacher. His name is Yang Laoshi, teacher Yang. His given name, which is interesting, is Yang Chen Long, which means sheep becomes dragon. And this is so, he's got like a tan members only jacket, often wears like duck boots, like those slips that are rubber all the way up to his mid calf, khaki pants, just looks like the dorkiest Chinese guy. But then when he moves on the floor, he is very powerful. It's hard to push him, but he really taught he's a Tai Chi teacher, but he was teaching Taoist alchemy, meditation. And there's some relevance there if we want to dive into it. I'd say the greatest lesson, the way to tell you about him, he's humble. His ability to interact with people transcends the limitations of Chinese culture. He was able to interface with us in a way that was transcendental. It was beyond all of my closest Chinese relationships. He could interact with us on a whole other level. He wasn't bound by his culture.
Man.
He was incredible. Very self-studied, and incredibly powerful in his body, and fun, joyful, and fun. Yeah.
I love that, man. And so your studies with him, did it look like, you said Taoist alchemy. So was it academic? Was it physical, or could you maybe describe what a typical week might look like in terms of your training and time with him?
Absolutely. Big city, couple million people. It grew while I was there. I had a nice mountain bike, so I would get up in the morning and I would ride my bicycle in the bike lanes about 2.5 miles from where I live to the zoo. We practiced in a zoo. The zoo was also a park. But you'd hear tigers and bears in the background roaring. There were storks and cranes. It was really cool. And we were in a pagoda, like what looks like what you're in. It was a round space that we kind of had the rights to because he'd been teaching there for years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd get to the zoo, to get a hot bowl of rice noodles on the way. I was working on warming up my constitution. So food therapy was part of it. Rice noodles, not wheat noodles, because the gluten and the heaviness, and I needed lighter fuel because I'm already pretty dense and thick. But then I'd put a lot of dry chili powder in my noodles and green onion. And as I did Tai Chi over the time, I got warmer and warmer from the inside out. It's so beautiful to feel the medicine in the food. My fingers got warm, and we trained year round outdoors, even through the winter. And we'd get to the zoo, and I'd get to the pagoda around 8 a.m. And I would do 30 minutes of standing meditation and then 30 minutes of seated meditation in the reverse order, actually. So I would just let the stress of that commute, the stress of being an outsider in a different culture, the stress of constantly having my brain try to learn the next layer of the language, all of those things, I would let that just fall off me as I sat on the bench with a little insulation from the cold concrete bench. And then I would stand up and stretch, and then I would hold standing post, like holding post, for 30 minutes. So it started with an hour of meditation. And then by the time he got there at 9 a.m., he would usually come in casually, have conversations with everybody, float around. Everybody was doing their own thing. And then he would bring us together and give a talk. It would be like the Dharma talk of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he would talk about the importance of pulling the mind back into the body. He would talk about the importance of relaxation. He would talk about something from the Yellow Emperor's Classic. I mean, this is where I got inspired to become a Chinese doctor. He was breaking down, these classic statements from these texts. And I'll share just one. There's this one poem. Let's see if I can remember it. It was Jing Shen Nei Shou. So mind and essence put back inside yourself. Zai Dantian Hu Shi, breathe in the lower abdomen. Yuan Qi Chongman, your original energy overflows. Bing An Tong Lai, from where can illness come? So I know you have a meditation mindfulness background. So what he was saying from this medical tradition was, when we're able to bring our consciousness back into the body and allow it to accumulate in these vital centers, that our original energy, our vital energy, our immune energy, our hormonal energy starts to overflow, and it really starts to fill us out. And when that happens, it's very difficult to be manipulated. It's difficult to have energy vampires suck on you. It's difficult to become a victim of your own trauma. It's difficult to get COVID when you're full of your own, vital energy. And that passage stayed with me. I mean, I barely grasped it in his explanation. I had my own copy of the Yellow Emperor's Classic. I found it. I had him show me the page it was on, and it was an English, Chinese, like dual language edition. And man, and I was so inspired. And then we would go stand. We'd go do exactly what he said. And eventually, the goal of the alchemy is that you're doing it while you're talking, while you're walking. There's part of you that your spirit is recharging your body at all times. And this is true. Like ejaculation is the massive expenditure of our most vital essence. It's this huge expenditure, and it's not to be taken lightly. It's not to be expended without thought and intention in that tradition.
Yeah.
So.
Total opposite of very much the culture today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing a bit about your history. I think so many of us that kind of resonate with your path and going to a foreign country and really immersing yourself in the study and the culture for several years, I think is something that many of us long to do and pursue, and fully immerse ourselves in. So appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for listening. It's great to revisit the past a little bit. So.
Yeah, brother. Thanks so much. So I'm curious, just for those who may be tuning in or maybe less familiar with the conversation, how would you describe or define this idea of alchemy, Kai?
Well, man, it's funny. I was going to speak at a symposium on alternative cancer treatments in Mexico. I was going to be giving a keynote speech, and whoever the committee was that was finalizing the roster, they bumped me at the last minute because of the word alchemy in my website, and they said that's not scientific. And it's just so funny to me, you know. And yeah, so what is alchemy? Well, on the most simple level, alchemy is the understanding that the quality of human life is the result of a beautiful and complex combination of our mental emotional sphere, of our environmental energy, and then of the food we eat. That health, it's like, you know, Western medicine is looking for like, what is the gene that's getting switched on in this case? You know, what is the medication that can turn the symptom off? It's very segmented and separated, right? Expertise, like I'm a heart doctor and this is a liver doctor. Well, alchemy would say you can't borrow from the liver to treat the spleen, because eventually there's an interconnection of all life. And so I think at the fundamental level, alchemy is the understanding that a human's life and quality of life is not just based on where they live or what they eat. It's also based on the emotions that they chronically feel or don't feel. It's also based on the quality of their relationships. It's also based on the amount of stress that's in their body. So, you know, this alchemical tradition is just that even traditional Chinese doctors that practice medicine in the United States, the alchemy of the medicine has been stripped away. You have tennis elbow, there's these acupoints. It's become linear. But it's not linear. You have tennis elbow for a reason. It's a message from your spirit. It's a message from your unconscious mind that to pay attention to something. You know, are you playing tennis to get away from your unworthiness, or to not face what's going on in your relationships? Or are you playing tennis chronically to try to get away from the fact that you work a job that you don't love? And the spirit will talk to you through the body. You know, if you don't listen, if you don't have a mindfulness practice that's like checking in with where does the soul want me to go in my GPS, then I believe that your spirit has no choice but to give you physical ailments to slow you down and help you look at what you're not looking at. So I think alchemy is just understanding that, like engaging in that process.
I love that, man. Just to kind of touch on the alchemy, maybe in regard to our sexuality and what's available for men. You know, you talked about how this conscious, intentional utilization and expression of our sexual energy or our seed, this vital life force. Maybe could you just, wherever you feel inspired, Kai, could you maybe just touch on this idea of a more intentional expression of our sexuality, our sexual energy, and what is available for us whenever we do kind of maintain a more intentional relationship with that?
Yeah, I think the first step, and the system that has come through me, that is really just me standing on the shoulders of this alchemy tradition and bringing in the science that we mentioned, the pathway of power. The first gate, the first arena of where we can garner more life force as part of our alchemical process, I call that the shadow gate. And what that means is that most of us, all of us, incur wounds and trauma from 0 to 7 years old when we come into this world. This is very commonly accepted in psychology as well. Yep. And if we don't get a handle on that, it will tend to run our lives in subtle or gross ways. And you're never done, in my opinion. I thought I was going to be done, and now I've realized I'm only going to spiral up or be held in a position, or spiral down around the core of my trauma, not to make it my identity, but just to know it's always going to be there. So let me say this next piece is that the core human fear, I believe, the two core human fears that are underneath all the other fears are the fear of being unlovable and unworthy. And that is why, if we want to get some rational empirical information, that's why there is greater fear in humans around giving a speech than there is around dying. Because when you're dead, there's nothing to be afraid of anymore. There's no more judgment or worry. You might be sad to miss out, but we're actually more afraid of public speaking because that puts us in the ridicule and judgment of others, which would then would force us to feel our unlovableness and unworthiness. Yeah. So what does this have to do with your question? The first thing is our sexuality can either be a celebration of life. It can be a conscious cultivation of this sexual energy up into our heart and our mind to do other things that we want to do in the world. And it can also be the celebration of another human being who we're in a sexual alchemical relationship with. Or, as it is for most men, we learn to masturbate as quickly as possible under the pressure of shame and guilt and getting caught. Nobody taught us about it. No, we didn't have an initiation with another man where we were taught to honor our seed and understand these alchemical principles. We didn't know that. We weren't taught that. And so we masturbate as quickly as we can to not get caught. And it becomes a way to off gas that excessive sexual energy that we get when we hit puberty. It becomes a way to fall asleep at night. It becomes a way to not face and feel the unworthy and unlovable that we're all going to have to find a new relationship with. So the first level is to like food, like work, like women, is to have the presence and consciousness and awareness to approach our sexuality, not from our wound, but from a gift. So that would be step one. And then, the very next step, you're asking what's available. Well, once we're able to strengthen the musculature down in our genital area, our pelvic floor, there is actually a muscle there's actually 4 different muscles. And let's see if I can get them all. The anus is one that has a relationship. There's one at the perineum, which is in between the anus and the genitals. There's one at the base of the penis. And we actually can influence and control the tip of our penis. So the next level is just like we go to the gym, we start to train, massage, and strengthen our sexual organs because our testicles are our external kidneys. So much of our testosterone comes from those testicles. And so there's self-massage techniques. There's sitting on the edge of a chair with your scrotum hanging over the edge. You breathe in, you draw the scrotum up. You breathe out, you let it sink down. You're going to increase the production of these vital chemicals to our body. Not through an external source, but just by tuning in, touching in a non-sexual way, and really getting the blood flow moving, keeping it working as a piece of equipment. So that's the next level. And then the level after that is to become a masterful influence over how long we stay hard, how long it takes from the time that we get excited to the time we ejaculate, so that we can please our women. We can feel really confident in our ability to and ultimately to be able to have an orgasm without leaking.
Yeah.
And for that to feel really good, for that to feel as good as letting it go. And that is there's a process, there's a step-by-step process. It's training, like going to the gym or training for a marathon. There's fundamentals, there's fundamentals all the way up, and then you combine those into processes, and then eventually you start to practice alone, and then you practice with your woman, and then eventually you have success. And it's a brilliant process. It's such a fun process. Yeah.
I love it, man. Would this be similar maybe to the practices that are shared or discussed in like Way of Superior Man and stuff like that? Is that in the same vein?
Absolutely. There's no question that David is influenced by Taoist cultivation. Yeah. More than Indian for sure.
Got it. So obviously there are sexual benefits, which you've spoken here as well. And it seems to me, from what I've heard and from the studies that I've done and the research and just firsthand kind of accounts and experiences, it seems as though through this kind of conscious relationship or cultivation we can have with our sex energy or that seed, there's also greater levels of power we can experience in our daily life, maybe increases in our sense of or awareness or our consciousness. Can you speak to anything like that beyond the sexual in our life, Kai?
Yeah, I know that the science is not all the way there yet, but if we stick with the physical level, your biology, evolutionary biology that we have as men, Matt, is designed that our body will beg, borrow, and steal from all the other organs and nutrients to create sperm, because sperm is key to the evolution of our species.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, there's even research that when a man is deathly ill, he will produce the most nutrient dense sperm, because it's like the last opportunity to spread his seed. So let's stay in the positive. So when we're not asking the body to keep making that over and over and over again, then there's more of those nutrients, specifically the substrate, the building blocks of the higher level neurotransmitters. So when you ejaculate, your dopamine is down. Your serotonin is temporarily up, but then it goes down. So there's this post-ejaculatory dip in our energy and our mood. And if we don't have the time, which most times we don't, to rest, to be held by our partner and reproduce that oxytocin, to get that deep sleep. I mean, a lot of men masturbate because of that deep, it's almost their way to meditate. It's like a hack to meditation. It's just a very expensive one. Mm-hmm. So when we're not doing that, I believe that those resources move in the cerebrospinal fluid up the spine. And that is for sure connected all the way up to our pineal gland. Mm-hmm. And it's a pressurized system. So here's another, I believe, people's teachings that in my experience come down to how many good distinctions they have. And one of the better distinctions that I've come to in the last couple of years is part of the value of this cultivation process for men to have an erection, to be sexually aroused, and to delay is that there's a pressure created that pushes that cerebrospinal fluid up to the brain. So the even if we ejaculate at the end, the longer the period of arousal and some pumping and breathing and pulling it up, if we can go an hour before we ejaculate, massively beneficial to the human body. Much less waste, much less down, on the other side. Even if we allow our seed to come out. So I think as an athlete, if you're up to big things in the world, like you've got a business and you're trying to change the world, that energy that's in our sperm is the generative energy. There's no other fluid in our body that has a motive force. Sperm outside your body still is swimming. It's still vectoring for the egg. It's trying to orient like a compass to the North Pole. It's trying to find a place to germinate. So just the conservation of it will bring you into more compassion, more of the nuanced emotions of the heart, and it will bring you into higher levels of consciousness, just the ability to have more of these neurotransmitters. And there's more neurotransmitters than we've discovered. And a recent one is called anandamide, the bliss, which is connected to cannabis, connected to acupuncture. It's how cannabis operates in the body. We have this anandamide, which is a cannabinoid, an endocannabinoid inside the body. Relaxation, pleasure, bliss, happiness. If anandamide had a one sentence thing about what it is, it's happiness for no reason. Mm-hmm. It's the kind of people that are just kind of unflappable. And it's why people get addicted to cannabis, because they can smoke cannabis and feel better about their life circumstances, but they haven't actually done any work around it. They haven't, So anyway, it's really just about raising that energy up and being able to be a better peak performer in whatever else you're going to do with your life, including your romantic relationships.
Got it. Love that, man. One more kind of point on that, I think, at this time is in regard to, like, when you look back at like Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, there's a whole chapter on sex transmutation, and there's this idea around cultivating, harnessing, utilizing, focusing our sexual energy in the intention of manifestation. And I kind of spoke to that when I mentioned power and consciousness and stuff like that, but around the specific area of manifestation or creation. I know you've done a lot of work around Joe Dispenza, which I have as well. I know he teaches a similar maybe you can speak to it as well. Practice where we're focusing on bringing that energy up from the base, up through the I guess the spinal column, up into the pineal gland, and there's kind of that practice. And he also does a lot of work around manifestation as well, I think, with the vision work. And maybe I'm off a little bit on that, but can you speak anything to this, the idea of maybe utilizing this energy around manifestation or creation as well, Kai?
Yeah. Let's go dispense on this. I love
Okay.
it. So yeah, I'm really big into the law of attraction, which I call conscious reality creation. The first thing I'll just say to get it on the books for people that are listening is that I don't believe that you can bypass your base emotions. That I think that most humans, and Chinese medicine, Louise Hay, a lot of good research would support this, that most human beings alive today, just because of the nature of reality, are sitting on a well of unexpressed anger and grief. Those are the primary emotions that there isn't a real, that most family units do not create a safe place. And certainly that can lead to masturbation as a way of not feeling it. But ultimately, I don't believe we can build a strong alchemical base, a high level of peak performance, without being able to face and feel those emotions and move through them. Because when we do, as the Dalai Lama, the research on the Dalai Lama and on children has shown us, when a human being is not resistant to those lower emotions, then, and they're able to skillfully feel them, the refractory period of these emotions is seconds to minutes. However, most of us, and a lot of the work I do as a coach and a healer, and whatever you want to put label you put on my work, is I'm helping people realize that the cost, their whole life has been built around avoiding feeling those things. Even people with 7 and 8 figure businesses are achieving to cover up and not feel this deeper level of suffering that's inside all of us. And the beauty is we can start to learn to enjoy it. You can start to learn to enjoy your anger and to let it out, not at anyone. Okay. So how does that relate to manifestation? Well, let's use Dispenza's model, which is research-based. Dispenza's model is that our thoughts are electrical, and we already know our thoughts are beyond our body. That there's glial cells that we thought were structural in the brain that we found now are actually holographic electromagnetic. So there's these cells that turn on, and how we discovered this is people would have a stroke, a part of their brain would die, and then these glial cells, through an electromagnetic, non-local energetic field, would recreate those memories without a correlated brain component. They would just see the glial cells light up, and then the memory would come back, this person's function would come back, and they weren't doing it by regenerating a part of the brain. They were electromagnetically reconnecting the brain, and we can measure this now. So Joe's model is that when we meditate on our vision, the thought is the signal that goes out and connects us to the quantum field, where there's infinite parallel realities, and there is a reality where you have what you want. If everything's possible, there's one reality where you have what you want. And I mean, quantum physicists are saying we literally live in the holodeck. And this is very familiar to Buddhists, right? It's very similar to the illusion, Maya, that's not real, and anyway. Okay, so now here's the important part, which is so cliche and yet true. It's our ability to feel the emotion of worthiness as if we already have the result. That is the magnetic field that draws the experience back to us, literally draws the right people. And on a neuroscience level, when we believe we deserve something and we can already feel the gratitude for having it, then our reticular activating system, the editor of what we see and what we delete and what we distort, which is running, is filtering through the hundreds of thousands of bits of information. If we don't believe we're worthy, we're going to walk right past the beautiful woman who could love us in a way that we've never been loved. And we're going to pick the partner that's going to love us in the flawed way that we're used to from our parental unit. So if you conserve your sexual energy and that motility, that refined essence in the semen, that can allow us to feel more compassion, more joy, more gratitude. If we're raising that up, then I believe the electrical signal from the brain is stronger and the magnetic drawing back of the positive emotion is stronger.
Mm.
And so that's how I believe it relates. And this is no different than, you know, especially in the community of Black athletes in our country. For a long time, there was this funny conversation where white athletes would have they had no concept of not ejaculating before a big match or a big fight or a big thing. And they would, as the Black athletes got more integrated into the community and they would be starting to hang out together, they would say to the white athletes, "What are you doing? You can't have sex tonight. We've got an Olympic tournament coming up." And it was like in their culture, somehow there was a wisdom transmission from a long time ago, or just a knowing that's you don't do that.
Yeah.
That's not okay. Like, that's Muhammad Ali, not okay. He knew that,
Right.
you know? So I really believe, and you know, for our ligaments, for our tendons, for our joint integrity, I believe that energy, that sexual energy, that's going to create a whole new set of joints. It's going to create a whole new nervous system. It's really expensive. And that's what the Chinese say. They say 1 drop of semen is equal to 100 drops of blood in terms of its nutrient density, in terms of its innate potential. So,
man, that's beautiful, man. I appreciate that share so much. I really appreciate the wisdom. As I mentioned, I was checking out some of your interviews and some of your conversations that you had on your site and stuff like that prior to our conversation. And what I really appreciate about your work and what I really appreciate about Joe's work, Joe Dispenza's work, is the ability to bring like the woo together with cutting edge modern science and kind of making it all come together and start to make sense and making it, you know, believable and, you know, really creating buy-in from the scientific community and maybe the skeptics, you know?
yeah, I mean, I like Joe says very, very clearly that science is the contemporary language of mysticism, because science doesn't divide people. It brings people together. And Deepak, Deepak Chopra 10 years ago said, science is going to go wherever the mysticism goes. We have the science now, especially with quantum physics, to go wherever human mystical experience can go. There will be a logical, rational explanation for it now, because we have this quantum model, this subatomic model, and the rules in the subatomic world are much more woo. Because what is woo? Woo is non-physical. It's metaphysical. Quantum physics is metaphysics, because it's at that level of the subatomic particle. The fact that we're 99.9% energy, empty space, which is to say energy, and the material, because we live in an illusion. We live in a reality that feels so physical, and yet the best scientists on the planet are saying that's not true. We're energy more than matter. So anyway,
was it Tesla that said something like, if you want to understand, he said, if you want to understand, I forget what word he used, then learn learn the laws of, what is it, energy and vibration or something like that. Did Tesla say that? What was it?
He did say something like that. So did Einstein.
Yeah. Right on, brother. I appreciate everything you shared so much, man. Just to kind of bring this all kind of back around, like maybe relevant to our community here, which I think this conversation has been very relevant to our community today. I'd love to just ask you, and you can kind of maybe address these in whatever order you think is best. I'd love to ask you, just on a very practical level, a man dealing with maybe sexually compulsive behavior, sexual compulsive relationship with pornography or sex in general. How might a man go about beginning to create greater levels of awareness and discernment around his sexual energy, these impulses that he's experiencing, these patterns and cycles that maybe he's been in all of his life? Maybe some practical tips for just beginning to rein that back in and regaining some control and intention around that. And maybe secondly, again, whatever order you think is best, maybe can you talk a little bit about the actual application or practice of this drawing of the sex energy up and maybe having that orgasm without the ejaculation?
Yeah, it's great. Well, I think the beginning the beginning of reining it in is one way to do it is to have a really strong vision for what you want in your life.
Mm.
And, you know, I know for me, you know, because I obviously I have permission with my wife to masturbate, and I can masturbate to her, to my fantasies of her. I have full permission for that. I can masturbate and have an internal orgasm, and I'll just be, you know, I'll be transparent. I probably there's still probably a 30 or 40% loss of energy, but it's 60 or 70% better than an ejaculatory orgasm for me.
Yeah.
There's more awareness, there's more energy the rest of the day, but I'm not at the level where it's a add-on beyond not ejaculating, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at in this process. So number one is having that vision, waking up and knowing whether it's your fitness goals, whether it's finding the love of your life, whether it's making more money or more impact. If you're connected to how good that's going to feel, and you can infuse and link, it's called neurolinking, that not ejaculating that day is part of this vision, part of what's going to get you there, then you're good. You have way less likelihood to slide back into the gravity. But if you're just living your life ho-hum with no vision, no direction, then the pull of the dopamine dump from porn. By the way, I know I've shared this before, but just so your listeners know, here's the other ways to educate yourself. That, for example, when I do men's coaching or relationship coaching, that the way our brains are set up, when we watch porn and ejaculate, the levels of dopamine are somewhere between 200 and 300% more than we'll be able to get with a woman without advanced tantric practices. I believe when you have advanced tantric practice like breath work, eye gazing, taking turns, getting each other close and pulling back, I think there's even more dopamine there. But average sex compared to porn, the man's going to get up to 200% more dopamine. That means when he goes back to any woman, he's going to feel slightly disappointed. So educating yourself on the consequences, educating yourself on the reasons you're doing it, getting in a program like you've got, Matt, where there's other men doing the same thing. That's huge, because, and what is in peak performance, this is called why power. When you understand why you do something, when you understand the cost of inaction, of handling it, of what's likely to happen, you get in touch with porn and masturbation can destroy a marriage. Very low success rate in a marriage where the man is watching porn. Very low success, very higher rates of infidelity, lower rates of intimacy, higher levels of premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction. So another way to rein it in is to take the time to connect to the negative emotional consequences of what will happen if you don't rein it in.
Yeah.
The nature of addiction is in the moment of relapsing into the practice or into the addiction, your mind deletes the consequences and the cost. You part of your mind that is in contact with the cost, that's just put out, and feel like it brings to mind, like there's an African psychedelic plant called Ibogaine, and the main function of Ibogaine is that after you do that, take that medicine for I can't know if it's 30 days or 60 days, you are incapable of going into your addiction without remembering of how bad the consequences are. That circuit is off. And so if you're going to relapse into heroin or whatever, you remember what it's like to be on the street and maybe compromising your sexuality to get this drug. You remember the loss of dignity of that. And so then when you go to do the drug, you're like, no way, I'm not doing it. I'm that's insane. So anyway, we can create this without a psychedelic. We can create this just through taking the time to go down into the darkness of it. Okay. So educate yourself, get connected to your vision. The third method is, if I borrow from Stealing Fire, the Flow Genome guys, I don't know if it's theirs originally, but I would say hedonic engineering, which is to say plan rewards for your abstinence. give yourself pleasure for your absence. I'll give you an example of what I call pleasure stacking so that we can get close to the level of dopamine that masturbation might have. So one of my pleasure stackings is in my living room. I have a wood stove and I have a big 75-inch TV. And one of the ways I pleasure stack after a hard week of work, when I want to reward myself, is I will bring in a massage therapist who's my friend, and I will put on my favorite movie, and I'll have a fire in the fireplace, and I will literally have a 90-minute massage. But not only will I have the massage, but I'm kind of like remote controlling the massage. I'm like, okay, do my feet. Oh, my traps. Like, and she's in acupuncture school. She's super cool. There's tremendous amount of respect. I pay her very well. It's beautiful, but there's something for me about the movie, the fire, and then getting massage exactly where I want. It's not a routine going through a pattern. And then that really helps me to get through my week, to power through my coaching, to show up for my family when I know I have that kind of reward. So rewarding ourselves. So, and then the last part is you want to get into the practical. I really think that on a very simple level, Mantak Chia's work, it is not super accessible, but he's got one on men's sexual energy that I think is a great foundational text, and it's accessible enough. And he has all the techniques in there. But I would agree that Joe Dispenza's pineal gland activation, that is fundamentally a Kundalini yoga practice, which is to seal the leaks in the lower energy centers and to pull that cerebrospinal fluid up to the brain. I would absolutely say someone who practiced that method every day would very quickly get control over their orgasm response and the release of it. And that's exactly what an internal orgasm feels like. The energy is getting provoked, and you're breathing and you're squeezing, especially in the early stages. It's very mechanical and physical. There's a lot of breathing and grunting and squeezing the legs together, squeezing the glutes together, pulling it in and up, in and up, in and up, looking up in the back of the head, tucking the chin. All that, Montauk's got all that dialed. And literally, when I'll break out in a sweat just from my head after an orgasm. Now, that's working. I feel like I just had a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I don't drink coffee, actually, black tea, but whatever it is, I'm jacked up. I am in a good way. I'm charged up when I do that really well. So I think that, getting one of those books, I'd say the Mantak Chia book, or purchasing Dispenza's, his pineal gland activation. It's actually on YouTube for free.
What's that Mantak Chia? I studied Kung Fu for a while, and I believe they recommended one of Mantak Chia's books. I'm trying to think of which one I have, but is there a specific text, Kai?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I'll look it up. It's my favorite one. I go back to it.
It was the yellow one, I recall, I think.
Yeah, no, I like the one. It's purple. It's called Taoist Secrets of Love with a T, Cultivating Male Sexual Energy. And it's co-written with Michael Wynn, who's one of his, Caucasian students who, Montauk's English isn't great. So Michael was kind of a ghostwriter for the book.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. That one is the most comprehensive one that I know. It talks a lot about the stuff I'm talking to us about bringing it up the spine. Whenever he can, he brings in biology and anatomy. And then all the practices are in there, from the testicle breathing, self-massage, all that. It's all in there.
Cool.
And I believe there's videos you can purchase, for that stuff as well. On his, the Tao Garden kind of stuff. So.
Love it, bro. And just for any of the brothers or anybody listening who's maybe newer to this conversation, I began hearing about these, the man's ability, just like a woman, to have an orgasm or multiple orgasms without actually ejaculating, and the immense pleasure that can be derived there. And then the energetic boost that is experienced afterwards, which you spoke to today. But apparently, that's a whole thing and a real possibility for those that are willing to cultivate the practice.
Yeah, and I'd love to speak a little bit to the cautions, because it's really best to be done with a teacher. And I don't say that just because I teach it. I say that because there's a physiological risk. It's completely worth it. And there's a lot of Chinese medicine practitioners, usually guys that have not practiced it successfully, who really will have a very strong opinion that it's not healthy, it's not natural. Okay,
Yeah.
so I want to put that out there.
That's good. Thank you. Yeah.
Here's why. In the beginning, when you start to be able to, like, one of the first things you do is you take your 3 fingers and right on the perineum, you press in as you're about to ejaculate. And you're basically just squeezing off the pipe. And so what happens is you basically ejaculate into your bladder. It's called retrograde ejaculation. That sperm is not recyclable. You're just going to pee it out. And so one of the signs of the beginning phase is you have an internal orgasm. There's very little leakage, but you have urgency to urinate. You have painful or burning urination. And when you pee, it's like there's soap bubbles in the water. That's your sperm. That's your vital nutrients. So really, you didn't do anything except not have it come out the penis. There's very little recycling and restoration. And that's where our plumbing can get jacked up. We can get prostatitis, where the prostate's inflamed, which the Chinese doctor would call damp heat in the prostate. All this energy is trying to come through and you're just holding it back. So then the second level is, as you train these muscles, you start to be able to shut it off higher up the stream. So now the fluid doesn't even come out. And now it gets reabsorbed by the kidneys and the testicles and goes back into our endocrine system. But just so you know, in the intermediate phase, the signals that you're not at the level that you want to be yet are bubbles and foam in the urine, urgency to urinate after you do your internal orgasm, painful urination, or any kind of swelling or heaviness in the prostate, which you'll feel down near the perineum. You can feel that. So anyway, I just want to put it out there. It's really valuable to have a teacher, because the Montauk does a great job of telling you the steps. You're doing testicle breathing. You're doing Kegel exercises. You're strengthening all that before you try the 3-finger, I think he calls it the $1 million point, the 3-finger, stop the plumbing. You're doing that as an add-on to the musculature that you've already developed. So, and Matt, have you done a Vipassana before?
I have not yet.
Okay, but you've done some meditation retreats, yeah?
Oh, lots, yeah.
Yeah. So one time I was in a Vipassana, which is a 10-day meditation retreat.
Yeah.
It's 90% practice. There's a little video of Goenka every night. But I was there on day 7 on my second one. And, Goenka had said the night before, don't combine this with any other technique. And the Irish rebel in me is sitting there on day 7. It's my second retreat. I'm in my meditation and I'm remembering Goenka the night before, don't combine this. And then of course my Irish mind goes, what can I combine this with? And so I thought back to because I was in Taiwan, I thought back to my tantric training and those locks. And I decided I was going to see what happens if I try those locks out while I'm meditating. I've been doing 7 days, 10 hours a day. Yeah. I literally go in there and it was like butt lock, perineum lock, base of penis lock, tip of penis. It was like flipping light switches. Instead of like, it was just like lock, 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 lock. And they were all shut.
Yeah.
Because my mind was so much more present in my body that I had higher ability to get into that tissue and impact it. Because I wasn't so scattered and distracted.
Yeah.
So that's the other part, is like, I think, leaning into mindfulness practices really advance these kind of techniques, and they take them from the physical to more of the mental, spiritual level, Yeah.
Love it, brother. Thanks so much, man. So much wisdom here today. As we kind of draw to a conclusion here today, I'd love to invite you to share how others can connect with you and whatever you got going on and stuff like that. Before that, I'd love to just ask you, is there anything in closing you'd like to offer, Kai? Maybe just a message to those that may be listening, or anything that's on your heart at this time?
Well, the one thing I would say that we haven't mentioned is to be cautious of being hard on yourself and judging yourself. And I know one of the great, and Matt, I would love to know your perspective on this as well. When helping people with different addictions, what I have found, and I'll use the example of smoking, when I can get a person to be able to look in the mirror and say, Matt, you look in the mirror and you look at yourself and you say, Matt, I love you, man.
Yeah.
I really love you. And there's a bunch of methods to get a person from their unworthiness to their worthiness. Mirror work is really powerful. And then when I get them to be able to do that, and they believe that they love themselves at least an 8 out of a 10 or higher in their own evaluation, and then I have them come back to the cigarette right on the call, light the cigarette, say I love myself, and then take a puff. What happens is the body rejects it. They start to cough. So one of the methods that I've used with my men to help them overcome this addiction to porn and masturbation is to find a arena where they can masturbate and ejaculate, and they have permission of their partner. They're not using porn. And at the moment of ejaculation, to say, I love you. I love you, Kai, and let it rip. I love you, and let it rip. And they start to repattern, because the reason they were masturbating before was to get away from feeling a negative emotion. If you can associate the ejaculation with self-love, many times, the need for it falls away. And there also is this incongruence where they say they love themselves, and then they feel good for 5 or 10 minutes in the post ejaculatory, dip. But then the hours later, they are like, this is not in alignment with loving myself. This is expending my energy. This is tiring me out. I feel haggard. I feel exhausted. I don't want to do this anymore. I do love myself. So I would just say to be easy on yourself, to reward yourself, and to find a practice intermediately that is within the bounds of your relationships, where you can start to associate that with self-love and watch it fall away on its own.
Yeah, beautiful, brother. Yeah, we self-love is a big emphasis in our work as well. We do a meditation at the beginning of each one of our calls, and it can be as simple as just also placing the hand onto the heart and just breathing into that and just beginning to open up and experience those feelings of love for ourselves. That, to me, that is self-love, to experience love within ourselves, connect more to the heart. It also, I think, it gives us so much more room on our journey to be less critical of ourselves, less judgmental of ourselves, room for making choices and experiencing the effects and the ramifications of those choices, and allowing that to guide us and giving us ourselves grace, in that path.
Yeah. Because there's some neuroscience that supports that it's the self-judgment that locks the addiction in. And as soon as we have compassion for ourselves, we're able to let go of addictions much easier. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you so much, brother. Kai, it's been a pleasure to have you here today. We appreciate you gracing us with your wisdom, brother, and your journey and your experience. I'd love to invite you just to share, for those that may be listening that want to connect with you, where can they connect with you? What's the best way? And what else do you have going on that someone may be interested in checking out?
So my website is pathwayofpower.com. There is a application to work with me there. There's also a power leak assessment quiz, and it basically takes you through a couple sectors of your life where it'll help you kind of understand where can you start to implement some of these alchemical neuroscience-based practices in a way that will seal some leaks for you and start to get you more energy, clarity, and focus. That's called the Power Leak Assessment. It's the first thing you see on the website. I also have a Facebook group that I have not really, I haven't done a ton in. There is one really good training in there right away that is an introduction to the Pathway of Power, and that's called the Pathway of Power Dojo. And it's a free Facebook group. You just got to, answer a couple questions and you get in there. And I am committed to starting to give some love to that group. But also, as you know, Matt, you can go on my personal Facebook profile, Kai Van Bodhi. And there's a lot, if you go to the videos, there's a lot of interviews. There's some Qigong practices. You can really get a lot of content there. There's a whole series on flow, how to get more flow state in your life. I did a series of 6 or 7 Friday. And that's all in the video section of my personal profile page.
Love it. Well, thanks so much for sharing, brother. It's been an honor here, an honor to have you here today. Thanks for those of you who have tuned in. Ladies and gentlemen, Kai Van Bodhi of Pathway of Power. Thanks so much, Kai.
Thanks, Matt. It's been a pleasure, man.
Appreciate you, brother. All right.
Do you have a second? You want to talk for a second?